In 1845, two ships vanished into the Arctic ice. 129 men gone without a trace. For over 170 years, no one knew what happened to them, until modern explorers finally found the wrecks. But instead of answers, they found something far more unsettling. In the mid-1800s, Britain was obsessed with a single idea, the Northwest Passage, a sea route through the Arctic that could connect Europe to Asia, cutting travel time and transforming global trade. To find it, Britain launched one of its most ambitious expeditions ever. In 1845, two ships set sail, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. But these weren't outdated wooden vessels sent into the unknown. They were among the most advanced ships of their time. Their hulls were reinforced with iron plating, designed to withstand the crushing Arctic ice. They carried steam engines, giving them power even when wind failed. And inside, they had something almost unheard of for Arctic exploration, built-in heating systems. These ships were not just built to survive the Arctic, they were built to conquer it. And they were fully supplied for years at sea. Tinned food, still a relatively new invention. Scientific instruments, carefully packed provisions, even a library with hundreds of books for the crew. On paper, this wasn't a desperate gamble. It was a carefully controlled mission, a demonstration of British engineering, confidence, and control over nature itself. At least, that's what everyone believed. The expedition left England in May of 1845. At first, everything seemed normal. The ships were seen one final time by a whaling vessel in Baffin Bay, and then they disappeared into the Arctic ice. No distress signals, no messages, no return, just silence. And that silence would stretch on far longer than anyone expected. By 1846, the ships had entered what would become their final chapter. They became icebound, trapped in thick Arctic ice with no way forward and no way back. At first, it may have seemed temporary, but the ice never released them. Months passed, then years. The ships slowly drifted, locked inside a frozen prison. And somewhere in that silence, the situation began to break down. Because later, explorers would find something deeply important. A written record left behind on a stone cairn on King William Island. Today, it's known as the Victory Point Note. But it wasn't a simple logbook entry. It was written in stages. Different handwriting, different times, different urgency. And even more unsettling, parts of it were already outdated when they were written. Dates didn't fully match up to reality. Updates were confused, corrected, or layered on top of earlier information. It read less like a report and more like a report of a situation slowly slipping out of control. At one point, it even stated that the expedition had been abandoned, that the ships were being left behind, and that the remaining crew would attempt to march south across the ice. It is the last known written message from Franklin's men. After that, the Arctic goes silent again. As the years passed, Britain launched multiple search expeditions. They were desperate for answers. Search teams found scattered clues, graves, abandoned supplies, traces of movement southward across the ice, but never the ships, and never the full story. For over a century, Franklin's expedition became one of history's greatest mysteries. Then, in the 21st century, modern technology changed everything. Sonar mapping and underwater exploration began to reveal parts of the Arctic seafloor that had never been properly studied. And in 2014, one of the ships was finally found, HMS Erebus, resting on the ocean floor, intact enough that it still looked like a ship, frozen in time. Years later, HMS Terror was discovered as well. Two ships finally located, exactly where history had lost them. For the first time in over 170 years, it seemed like answers were finally within reach. But what the wrecks revealed did not bring closure. It only deepened the mystery. Inside the wrecks, many things remained remarkably preserved. Personal belongings, tools, everyday objects. As if the crew had simply stepped away. But they had left behind the strongest shelter they had in the most hostile environment on Earth, and gone into the ice. That decision is still difficult to fully explain. Evidence suggests the ships were eventually abandoned and left adrift in the frozen sea. But why leave it all? Why abandon reinforced ships, stocked with supplies, and heated cabins? On land, more disturbing evidence began to appear. Human remains scattered across the region showed that the crew had attempted to march south across the ice. but they did not survive. Some remains show clear signs of extreme starvation, and in a few cases, marks on bones have led some researchers to propose a controversial possibility: cannibalism in the final stages of survival. This interpretation is still debated and not universally accepted, but it reflects how far conditions may have deteriorated. At the same time, scientific analysis of remains has revealed another factor that may have played a role: evidence of severe nutritional deficiency, including possible zinc depletion, a condition that can cause fatigue, confusion, weakened judgment, and cognitive decline. If true, it suggests something even more tragic than a single cause. Not just starvation, not just cold, but a combination of environmental stress and physical breakdown that slowly eroded the crew's ability to survive or make clear decisions. Whatever the full truth is, it was not a quick end. It was a long collapse into one of the most unforgiving environments on Earth. Even today, Franklin's lost expedition is not fully understood. We know where the ships ended up. We know when they became trapped. We know they were eventually abandoned. And we know the crew attempted one final march into the Arctic. But between those facts, there is still a gap filled with uncertainty, contradiction, and silence. No single explanation fully accounts for everything that happened, and maybe that's what makes this story endure. Because sometimes history doesn't give us a clean answer. Sometimes it leaves us with fragments, a frozen record, a broken message, and two ships that waited more than a century to be found. And in the end, Franklin's expedition remains one of the Arctic's most enduring mysteries. Not because we know nothing, but because we know just enough to realize how much we still don't understand. If you enjoyed this journey into one of history's strangest mysteries, be sure to subscribe to Earth's Curious Past for more curious stories from our world's forgotten past. Because whatever the truth may be, history is stranger than it seems.